Fantastic. Now, that is the sound of a lion's roar. And if you can stick up the PowerPoint. As Anne said, we are on part 2 this week. And full disclosure, a lot of what you hear in this series is from a book called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark Batterson. I say some stuff he doesn't say. He says a lot of stuff in that book that I don't say in this series, so it's well worth a read. And my thanks to him for putting me on the track to preach this series. Last week, we focused on this, that the roar, when we're talking about running to the roar is the sound of opportunity. When a lion roars, you don't ignore it. You either go to it or you go from it. What you can't do is just pretend it never happened and ignore it. The question is this: do you run to, or do you run away? What are we called to be? The kind of people who run to, or the kind of people who run away? And I mentioned this verse from Deuteronomy 28:13. The Lord will make you the head, not the tail. If you pay attention to the commands of the Lord your God that I give you this day and carefully follow them, you will always be at the top, never at the bottom. That is what we are learning to live out the reality of. And today, part 2 is called Small Things. That is today's title, Small Things. Now, last week, we were looking at Benaiah as one of David's mighty men. We'll look at a few others as this series goes by. But one of the key things we looked about is these verses. Benaiah was the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man from Kabzeel, who had done many deeds. He had killed 2 champions of Moab. He also had gone down and killed a lion in the midst of a pit on a snowy day. So that's what we focused on last week. But here's the next bit of the story. And he killed an Egyptian, a spectacular man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, so Benaiah went down to him with a staff, wrested the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed him with his own spear. These things Benaiah the son of Jehoiada did, and won a name among 3 mighty men. He was more honored than the 30, but he did not attain to the first 3. And David appointed him over his guard. That's what I want to focus on, that idea. David appointed him over his guard. Now, I want you to understand something here. Benaiah did not have a plan. Benaiah was not sitting at home one day and saying, I would really like to be the captain of David's bodyguard. He's the king. Be the king's bodyguard. That would be a position I would aspire to. How am I going? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll wait until it's snowing, and then on that snowy day, I'm going to go out and find a lion. I'll chase it into a pit, and then I will kill the lion in the pit. I'll get noticed, and then David will make me his bodyguard. That is not what happened. You don't know what an opportunity is going to lead to. Benaiah did not know that there was going to be a result from killing that lion in that pit on that snowy day. He just did what was the right thing at the time. He used his training, he used his abilities, he took advantage of the opportunity, he protected others, he pushed back the danger. That's what was on his mind. And in doing the right thing, what an opportunity presented itself. He became the captain of the king's bodyguard. But that's not the end of his story. Because although that's all it tells us in that particular chapter, there is some other stuff about Benaiah. So I'm going to look at this story, what happens from Benaiah's point of view and from David's point of view. So starting off with Benaiah, the bit we know, he wins a few fights, he kills a lion, and he becomes captain of David's bodyguard. That seems pretty amazing, doesn't it? I mean, that's a great job. But 2 Samuel 8:18 said that leads to something bigger. He becomes the leader of the Kerethites and Pelethites. Now, we're not entirely sure who the Kerethites and the Pelethites are. There's a couple of theories. But because we don't know, I won't even bother to go into them. But he ends up being the leader of those people because of his position. And then, in 1 Chronicles 27, it tells us that during peacetime, David came up with a system. Instead of having his whole army and all his generals there all the time, he had a rotation. And he had 24,000 men that would be there in January, and a different 24,000 men would come and they would work in February. I mean, they obviously had their Hebrew names for the months, whatever their months were. And he had a different general and a different group of 24,000 men each month. And Benaiah gets a promotion. He gets promoted to be one of the top 12 generals of the army, put in command of 24,000 men. And during the third month of the year, he was the top guy, because the others were basically at rest, in their going back to their houses, the troops going back to their farms, that sort of thing. He is the top man for 1 month a year. That's another step up. That's not the end of the story, though, because in 1 Kings 2:35, after David is dead, and you may know the story that there's a lot of upset before he dies. There's problems with family, that sort of thing. But Benaiah stayed loyal to David through all of the problems, all of the issues. Benaiah stayed loyal. And after David was dead, his son Solomon goes to Benaiah and says, "You're now the top man of the army. I don't want you commanding the army for 1 month a year. You are in charge. You are the number one general of Israel." So this guy who wins a couple of fights and kills a lion is now the most important soldier in the entire nation. Now, I think killing a lion in a pit on a snowy day is pretty impressive. But actually, compared to what came next, it was a small thing, a small opportunity. But because he did that, it set him on a path to go very, very far indeed. There may be things that have happened in your life that seemed small at the time, but actually they've ended up having a big impact on what happens in the future. Let's consider this from David's point of view. So David, he's a charismatic guy, he's an amazing warrior, he's got the anointing of God upon him, and warriors are drawn to him. Lots of people come to him. When he was in his time of exile, a lot of other warriors in exile said, well, let's go and follow David. So a lot of mighty men came to him. And you hear about this guy, he's one of the men that's turned up, and he's called Benaiah, and he's a good fighter, and you hear that guy on the snowy day, he goes into a pit and kills a lion. Well, that's pretty impressive. And David thinks, what am I going to do with this guy? He sounds like the kind of guy I want guarding my back. I think I want him in charge of my bodyguard. Because here's a guy who, when the lion roars, he doesn't run away, he runs towards. If there's a problem, he's not going to save himself. He's going to run for the problem. He's going to protect me. So he makes him the captain of his own bodyguard. Does David know what's going to happen next? No, he doesn't. But he sees an opportunity to give a guy a job, because he's seen something in that guy. He's seen something in the way that he acts. And because of that, he says, I'm going to take a chance on this guy. I'm going to give him a job. It is one of his best decisions. David makes some very good decisions. If you know his story, he makes some absolutely terrible decisions in life. But this is one of the best decisions he makes, because it has an impact on him. It has an impact on his army. It has a direct impact on his family after he's gone. In fact, the next generation are protected because of Benaiah. David saw a guy, gave him a chance, and it didn't just impact the guy, it impacted David and the generation to come. I want you to think about that. When we're talking about running to the roar and the opportunity and what may result, it's not all about you. Because your small opportunity, small in inverted commas, of course it's going to affect you. But it can affect your family, it can affect your community, it can affect your church, it can affect the next generation. Opportunities that you take today can be influencing and affecting things after you have left this earth. Do you know, we are living in the blessing of giving and opportunities that other people did, some of whom are dead. You know, we know it's the 80th anniversary of the church this year. Many of the people who have invested and taken advantage of small opportunities in this church are now dead, but we are living in their legacy. You leave a legacy for the generation to come. I'm just going to give you 3 examples of some small opportunities. Some of you will have heard of Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They were a couple of students. They were working on a way of cataloguing information, and then they graduate, and in 1998, they started a business. And their premises were a friend's garage, and in addition to the 2 of them, they had 1 employee. I would call that a small beginning. In 2024, they had 180,000 employees, $137 billion turnover, and they made $30.7 billion profit. You may know them as Google, or the parent company is Alphabet. And basically, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, one of them heads Alphabet and one of them heads Google, and they are multi-billionaires. Okay, they're not billionaires, they're multi-billionaires. Over 100 billion they're worth. It was small when it started, but it didn't stay small. Some fishermen met Jesus one day. They'd seen him around, they'd had a couple of conversations, but one day Jesus came up and said, I want you to leave your nets and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they said, to be honest, Jesus, I'm all right. I've got an ambition, I've got a plan. I'm going to keep fishing, and I'm going to get enough fish that I can buy another boat, and then I'll have 2 boats, and I'll be able to employ some people, but I will get the fish from both the boats, and then I'll start to get a little empire running, and maybe I'll get another boat sometime, and maybe I'll have 3 boats, and I'll be able to look after my family. So no thanks, Jesus. I'll stick with my nets. Of course, that isn't what happened, but it might have been. If they hadn't said, there's something about this guy. I will leave my own ambition, I will leave my plan, and I will follow Jesus and see where it takes me. And after Jesus died, the responsibility for the growth of Christianity rested on those people. And the world we live in is radically different to what would have happened if there had been no disciples after Jesus died. It was a tiny opportunity. It has literally changed the history of this entire planet. Small opportunity. Mark Howard in 1984. Some of you have heard me tell this story enough that you will instantly remember who Mark Howard is. Some of you will not. Mark Howard went to Salford University in 1984. He was a Christian, and he met an atheist, a really annoying, self-opinionated atheist who would always argue with him and ask him difficult questions, and he never could come up with an answer that would satisfy. And sometimes his argument would get tied up in knots, and he'd end up saying, I don't know the answer to your question, but I know God, and I'm a Christian because of the impact that Jesus has on my life. That's all I can tell you. And he could have kept quiet. He could have shut up about it. But he didn't. He kept talking to this atheist. And in the end, he invited that atheist to church, and the atheist went with him to make fun of him. And some of you know the story, and you know who we're talking about. We're talking about me. Okay, this is me. Actually, that was 1987, that photograph. I don't actually have one from 1984. That's me in an isotope separator. If you're really bothered about it, I'll tell you why I was researching isotope separators later. But on March the 10th, 1985, I became a Christian. Mark had put up with the rubbish from me, but I was an opportunity to him. I was somebody who was willing to listen. Even if when I listened, I argued with him, at least I listened. So he didn't shut up. He didn't stay quiet. He accepted when I made fun of him and ridiculed him. He just said, say what you like. I'm still a Christian. I still know I'm going to heaven. Oh, Mark, there is no heaven. When you're dead, you're dead. So you say, but I know you're wrong. I can't prove you're wrong, but I know you're wrong. And because he took advantage of that small opportunity, I became a Christian. And any good I have ever done in a Christian in this world is because of Mark Howard. If I've ever blessed you as a pastor, if I've ever helped you or been able to give you something or teach you something, do you know why? It's because Mark Howard didn't shut up when I was making fun of him. It was a small opportunity, but it's had an impact. I want to talk about destiny. I'm going to give you some facts about destiny. If you don't write these down, I suggest you take a picture of this slide when it's finished, because this is important stuff, okay? Destiny is rarely seen at the time. Benaiah did not know when he went into that pit he was going to become the captain of the guard and become the leader of the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and then become a 1 month of the year commander, and then become the commander of the whole army. He did not see it coming. You don't see at the time the significance of what's happening very often. Destiny is discovered one opportunity at a time. You see, sometimes you have an idea where God's leading you. You have a calling and you're going for it. But actually, you don't know the details. There was a time when God told me I would one day be a pastor. But I didn't know when, I didn't know how, I didn't know where. At that time, I was living in Salford. I ended up becoming a pastor in Birmingham. What I did was I followed God one opportunity at a time until that destiny was manifested. I did not have a plan of how to get there. I discovered the direction. I discovered the route, one opportunity at a time. Destiny is seized one opportunity at a time. Because you see, the opportunity comes, but what do? You see, destiny is discovered through the opportunity, but if you then run from the roar, you're not seizing the opportunity. You're not grasping it. You're not following through with it. You're not doing what God wants you to do with the opportunity. So you can't just drift. You have to seize the opportunity. Destiny comes by the cumulative effect of making the God choice. I'm going to explain that in a minute. It's a cumulative effect. It's not one thing. It builds up. There's a cumulative effect of a whole series of decisions, a whole series of choices. And I'm calling it the God choice. Because when you have a choice, are you going to make the God choice? Or are you going to do what you think? What you feel? That photograph of me by the isotope separator. In that year, I was offered 2 amazing jobs. I did not apply for them. It was interesting, we were chatting at Life Group this week, and somebody who was there was talking about, needing a job and how you go about applying for jobs and things. And she said, nobody's just going to come and offer you a job, are they? You have to apply. And I thought, little does she know, in this Sunday, I'm going to be talking about, I got offered 2 amazing jobs that I never applied for. So should I have seized that opportunity? But God had given me a third direction. God had told me to become a school teacher. And when those 2 jobs were presented, I had a choice. I could make the God choice and do as God had said and be a teacher, or I could make the non-God choice and do the job that would have given me a lot more prestige, a lot more money, What did I do? Guess what? I did the God choice. And being a teacher was a brilliant decision. If you want to know why being a teacher was a brilliant decision, for me, I'll tell you at another time. Feel free to ask. But it enabled me, in terms of becoming a pastor, it was a much easier route. It's much easier to move city. It's much easier to influence people. I had the privilege, I said I was going to tell you later, I appear to be telling you now. And I had the privilege of every year speaking to hundreds and hundreds of children about God. If I'd been a research scientist stuck in a lab, how many people would I have been able to tell about Jesus? So, when I say you've got to seize the opportunity, that is not the same thing as jumping at every chance that there might be. It's saying, okay, here's the opportunity. If this is a God opportunity, I want to seize it. If, on the other hand, it's a red herring, it's a distraction, then I want to choose to ignore it. There's a cumulative effect of every choice. Make the God choice. Destiny slips away one opportunity at a time. God has a plan for you. It is not necessarily going to be fulfilled. That's a scary thought. God has a plan for you, but it might not be fulfilled because it depends upon you making the God choice each time. And who knows, if I had made all my correct choices, then by now I might be pastor of a mega church with 45 campuses, and maybe I'm nowhere near where I would have been if I'd made the God choice every time. I don't claim to have made the God choice every time. But if we don't make an effort to hear from God and do what he tells us to do, and when the opportunities come, say, is this a good one, or do I wait for another one? If you don't do that, your destiny can slip away. I would seriously encourage you to take a picture of that slide or ask for my notes or whatever, because that's important. Understand that if you ignore the small opportunity, that can mean that you will miss a big opportunity. Sometimes something comes along and you go, oh, that's beneath me. I haven't got time for that. And yet actually the God choice is to do it, but you just brush it over and it's like, oh, it's not worth my time. But if you miss the small opportunity, that might be the very thing that would have led to the big opportunity. If Benaiah said, oh, it's cold, it's dangerous, slippery underfoot, that lion will be around tomorrow. Maybe it'll be a bit warmer tomorrow. I mean, he might have killed somebody in the meantime, might have eaten a goat or a cow or something, but hey, I'll try another day. If he missed the small opportunity, he might have ended up missing the big opportunity. We've got to understand that. 2 verses from the New Testament. Jesus said, Luke 16:10, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. Luke 19:17, well done, my good servant, his master replied, because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter, take charge of 10 cities. Do you know what happens with some of these small opportunities? God is waiting to see what you do. Now, he already knows what you're going to do, but you don't. So he gives you the small opportunity, knowing that he wants you to take it, knowing you're able to be taking it, but actually knowing that you are not going to be faithful in the small thing. But he's trying to give you a chance. And when you miss it, maybe right now you might be thinking about opportunities that you've missed. The great thing about God is he makes that a learning thing. And you think about all the opportunities you've missed. So next time you think, I'm going to be faithful in a small thing. For all the times I was not faithful in the small things in the past, now I will be faithful. Now, I'm looking around this room, and I know you all, some of you very well, some of you fairly well. And I actually know that there are a bunch of faithful people here. So I'm partly talking to people who watch this in the future. Some of you have great ambition, great ideals. You want to lead churches. You want to preach to the masses. And here's the thing. You're not faithful in the little things. And if you're not faithful in the little things, what on earth makes you think God is going to give you the big ones? Because you think, when I get the big opportunity, then I'll start being faithful in the little things. Oh, if I get the job as a pastor, then I'll start learning about the Bible. Guess what? If you don't know your Bible well, no one's ever going to give you a job as a pastor. You have to put in the time first. You have to do your learning first. And then you get an opportunity. If you don't put in the important stuff on the little things, you never get to the big things. And you miss your destiny. This series, Run to the Roar, Part 2, is called Small Things. But I want to try and reset our brains about what is a small thing. Is a seed a small thing? Yeah, I think we can all say it is. Is a tree a small thing? Well, I suppose it all depends what you compare it to, but generally speaking, I would say trees are bigger than me. Tree is a big thing. So if you have a seed that can grow into a tree, is it a small thing or a big thing? You see, I would say a big tree grows from a small seed. So you only see it as small, but that very thing will become big. A big adult grows from a small baby. Is a baby a small thing? Well, yes. And yet, within it, there is the capacity for it to become big. A big company, like Google, grows from a small company, like that one working out at the back of the garage. A big church grows from a small church. A big city grows from a small village. Every city in the world started with nothing, and then a few settlers, and now you've got cities of millions of people. A long journey starts with a single step, even if it's a step towards the car because you're going to drive somewhere. A single step, the first step, is part of something immense. And I want you to try and think, it's more than just, I have a small opportunity, might it lead to something big? If you see it as part of the big thing, it's part of the destiny, it's part of the journey. Don't see it as a small thing. Because actually, it is part of an entirety, which is your destiny. Zechariah 4:10. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Now, the context of this is there's a prophet, Zechariah, and he has a vision one day, and God says, one of the leaders is called Zerubbabel. And I want you to go to Zerubbabel, and I want you to tell him some things. And one of the things that he said to tell him was this: do not despise these small beginnings. And what literal translation is, who has despised the small beginnings? But really saying you shouldn't be despising the small beginnings, because God is rejoicing as this work begins. And the context was this: Zerubbabel was arranging to have the temple in Jerusalem rebuilt. The temple had been absolutely flattened. They're going to build a new temple. Zerubbabel had gone and he had started, they'd got the foundations laid. And people were looking and saying, it's just the foundations. We have got a huge task ahead of us. It's too hard. It's too difficult. How will we ever manage to restore what we had? Is it even worth it? Maybe we should give up. And the message came from Zechariah, well, from God through Zechariah to Zerubbabel. Don't despise these small beginnings. Don't let anybody else look down on this small beginning. God is rejoicing that you've started this work. And he says, he rejoices to see the plumb line. Now, a plumb line is an instrument that you use basically for measurements and for checking that lines are straight. And he said, Zerubbabel, when you're walking around the foundations and you're measuring things and you're just seeing, is this bit straight, is that bit straight, then God is going, wow, this is fantastic, this is wonderful, this is amazing. Now, in your life, you might be feeling that nothing seems to be going anywhere. You might have some plans. You're a Christian for a start, that's great. But you're at the foundation stage. Nothing seems to be growing. And you might be thinking, well, will anything ever grow? Will anything ever come? Is there any kind of plan or destiny for my life? And God says to you, do not despise this little beginning, this small thing, you're at the situation where you're measuring, you're at the situation where you're planning, you're at the situation where you're checking that everything is straight and level. And if that's the situation you're in, God is going, yes! God is rejoicing at that part of your journey. And we tend to be a bit, this is the rubbish bit of the journey, this is the learning bit of the journey, this is I want to get over there. But God is rejoicing in this bit of the journey. So how do we respond to this today? Is your second chance to take a picture of that slide, if you missed it the first time. Destiny is rarely seen at a time. Destiny is discovered one opportunity at a time. Destiny is seized one opportunity at a time through the cumulative effect of making the God choice. And destiny slips away one opportunity at a time. If we have that in our minds as we go through our lives, we will run to the roar. If you forget this stuff, the opportunity comes and goes and it's too late and you never thought about it. Because as we've said before, your response depends on your preparation. If you've got those facts in your mind, then when the opportunity comes, you're ready. You seize it. You go for it. Or you pray and you say, right, God, is this to go for? Is this a distraction? But I'm not going to just drift. I'm going to make a choice. Some parts of God's plan may be clear for you. You might know God has spoken to you about certain things. Fantastic. But don't ignore the small things, because it's the very small things that build the path that reaches the larger destiny. Don't drift through life. Too many of us drift through life. Too many of us just keep doing the same thing all the time. This is my pattern. This is what I do. This is my habit. This is what I get into. And you don't even think to make a decision to change it. You don't even think to do something different because you're drifting. You don't even look for an opportunity because you've just, I wouldn't say stuck in a rut, because a rut implies a terrible thing, but a rut in the sense of you just keep doing the same. Maybe God wants you to do something a little bit different, to recognize opportunities, to make a decision. Is there something you're neglecting? We talked about the importance of getting the small things right. Last week, we were focusing on connecting with God and saying, if you don't take the time to connect with God, well then, don't expect to be prepared when the opportunity comes. Is there some part of the Christian life you are neglecting? I didn't mention it last week, maybe I should have done. If you want to connect with God, the UCB word for today, the November issue is here. Okay, so if you want to start a new thing, it's a little message about the Bible, some verses it suggests that you read, a little thing every day. They're free. They're on the stand. 31 declarations. Every day you can make a declaration. 26th today. Today's declaration is this: I declare everything that happens to me or around me is ultimately working together for good in my life because I love God and I am called according to his purpose. And that declaration is based on Romans 8:28. Now, a lot of you have got this, but if you haven't, I've just printed a few more this morning, and we have copies in Farsi as well. Every day, you can read a line that helps prepare you to see the opportunity, to seize the opportunity. If you don't do that, it's up to you. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. If you like an electronic version, we emailed them out. If you didn't get one or you lost it, tell me. I will email you another one. But it's a small thing. But if you get the small things right, it leads to big things. If you're thinking, what can I do? I want to do something. There's a leaflet called How Can I Get Involved? There are copies over there on that notice board stand. If you don't know how you could be involved, what you might be able to do, read that leaflet. And it will tell you a whole possible list of options that you can pray about and say, okay, God, what's my God choice? So many options here, I don't know which to pick. So tell me, Father, guide me. Small things are not small things, because the small things not only lead to the big things, but they are an integral part of the big thing. And therefore, you can't have the big thing without the small thing. You can't have an adult without a baby. You can't grow a tree without a seed. And cuttings don't count because the cutting came from a tree that had a seed. So yeah, those of you who are thinking I was wrong. All of these examples, the small thing is integral to the big thing. How are you doing with the small things?